I was having difficulty because my phone had run out of space, so I've decided to do it live from this channel because I've got enough subscribers on it. I might post it to some of my other channels as well. The James Crompton podcast is probably the one that I'll post it to. But anyway, this is a tarot reading for the New Zealand elections, and I've managed to do a pretty good job of predicting the kind of makeup of Parliament in previous elections using tarot. I did predict, for example, Jacinda Ardern's rise to power when it looked very out of the question, as I think it was David Cunliffe or Andrew Little was head of the Labour Party. And I managed to predict that she would take over the party and become the new leader and even have a baby potentially, and also form a government with Winston Peters at the time. So let's have a look at what we've got for this election. So with I drew a card for National, and it was the Queen of Wands. I drew a card for Act, and it was the Three of Pentacles. I drew a card for New Zealand First, and it was the Death card. And I drew a card for Labour, it was the Fool in reverse. I drew a card for the Green Party, and I got the Six of Pentacles. And I drew a card for the Maori Party, Te Pāti Māori, and got the Devil in reverse. At this stage, I haven't drawn any cards for any other parties. They don't look in the latest polls like they're getting over the threshold, unless we change the MMP system and remove the 5% threshold. I find that there's a lot of barriers to entry for other parties, new parties getting in, and I can't see any of the other parties getting over the line at this point in time, the way things stand. So in relation to that, the Queen of Wands looks like someone sitting on a throne. You can see she's got a blue cloak, which is the colours of National, but you can see she's got a yellow dress, which is the colour of Act, and Act, which would seem to suggest that Act would have a lot of influence in this government. It's also got a yellow crown on the head there as well. I don't think that necessarily means that David Seymour would get the prime ministerial role, unless Act suddenly gets more votes than National, which doesn't seem right, but it seems like a national government but with a lot of Act influence in that government, because they're on the throne with the Queen of Wands. Whereas if you look at Labour, the Fool in reverse, it looks like there's a blockage to them being able to make that leap into Parliament, leap into government, and they've got the little dog at their heels, but and the green cloak as well, so suggesting the greens are part of that makeup, and maybe the yellow boots, which are Te Pāti Māori, might struggle to make it through. However, then we also got for Act, we got the Three of Pentacles, which is a card of support in creative endeavors. It's almost like a sponsorship kind of business deal kind of card, which suggests that they will be making a deal with National potentially, which clarifies this card that National got as well. However, you'll notice in this card that there is a black cat sitting on a bench down here. Very interesting. I did ask whether National and ACT would be able to form a majority government alone together. Excuse me. And I pulled the Knight of Swords in reverse, which suggests that they might be getting ahead of themselves and thinking that they would be able to do that, very much like the previous election where they got ahead of themselves thinking that they were going to be the ruling government because they had a majority. That's the one before the last election, but they got ousted at the last minute because Winston Peters decided to go with Jacinda Ardern, who had less votes. So that was, it seems to be a similar kind of situation here where they seem to be getting ahead of themselves, thinking that they will form a majority government just with National and ACT. There may be a few more discussions that need to be had. So, I pulled the death card for Winston Peters, well, for the New Zealand First Party. Now, what does that mean? It could mean the end of their party, yes. Possibly it could, meaning that they don't get into government and Winston's getting pretty old and that he might not continue after this election. But death can also be a positive card, which can be a card of transformation, and you'll note that New Zealand First didn't get into government last time, and this is a card of change, which means possibly that they will get into government this time. And they are hovering around 5% in recent polls, so yeah, it's possible that we could see New Zealand First back in government. All right. The Greens, interesting. You've got a man in a red cloak, and it's not very easy to see, and a woman in green there, and also the yellow of Te Pāti Māori. That this card kind of suggests charity, but we've seen Labour with this card in reverse here. So, yeah. And the other thing I've got here is Te Pāti Māori with the Devil card in reverse, which is an interesting card. Now, I think that either ACT or National ruled out going with Te Pāti Māori from memory. But, you know, you always have to wait till after the elections before you make these decisions. I think it's pretty stupid people ruling out going with each other, to be honest. It's because somebody has to form a government at the end of the day, and you might not have enough on your own because there are more parties entering into government. These major parties want to think that they've got, enough to be able to form a government with just one other party. They're trying to, get everybody to vote for them, but there's more colours in Parliament, and I would actually like to see the MMP threshold drop so that we have a more proper representation of the colours in society in government, because at the moment the 5% threshold is a real barrier to entry to new parties entering Parliament. Just my 2 cents. Anyway, it's interesting, this Queen of Wands with National with the ruling cloak and ACT there, but there's this black cat on a bench. So that could mean, you know, I asked, I think, whether uh, New Zealand First would be part of the ruling government. I think that was the question I asked for this one, and got um, the Two of Pentacles in reverse, which shows someone weighing up two sides of a coin and perhaps finding them both wanting, suggesting maybe New Zealand First doesn't want to form a government with Labour. They've already ruled Labour out, and perhaps they don't want to form a government with National either, because last time they didn't. They haven't made any indication that they wouldn't or would. I also got the Lovers in reverse as to whether they would form a government with National, and that suggests a kind of separation or divorce. Whether National, I think actors ruled out working with New Zealand First, so that makes a lot of complication in terms of forming a government with National as well, because they need ACT to get over the line. So maybe that's where the problem lies. Also got the Magician in reverse, suggesting, I don't know, maybe they're more affiliated with Labour in their policies, but they've had this split with Labour, so they can't really be a part of that government. We've also got this card as to whether they'd form a coalition with National, which suggests, you can see this pentacle on the side. He's pulling the pentacle over to the side. This is the colours of Labour and the Greens potentially, although they're kind of bluey green. But he's pulling his resources over to the side, keeping them away, saving them for later. So suggesting maybe that that he does not want to form a government with National or Labour, potentially. And this black cat suggests someone sitting on a bench, sitting on the cross benches perhaps, which is the colour of New Zealand First. So that's an interesting thing. I also asked whether National and ACT would form a minority government, and I got this weak strength in reverse, which suggests weakness. So it could be, doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to form a minority government. It's often considered weak to have a minority government. But does that mean that National and ACT have a minority government with New Zealand on the crossbenches? The other option is confidence and supply, but the cards didn't seem to indicate that New Zealand First were interested in a confidence and supply arrangement. And this cat is sitting on the edge of the stool, or almost like it's outside of the arrangement somehow. Could be confidence and supply. They've said that they would work with National. ACT said that they ruled out working with Winston Peters. So the other option would be New Zealand First working with National and ACT being on the crossbenches, but that doesn't seem to be indicated here. So it could be National and ACT with New Zealand either on the crossbenches, New Zealand First either on the crossbenches, or supporting with confidence and supply. That's my take. But, however, the other interesting thing is that yellow is also, I believe, the colour of Te Pāti Māori. So I think they've got similar colours, ACT and Te Pāti Māori. I'm not entirely sure about that. It's interesting that Te Pāti Māori got the devil in reverse. And they've worked with both National and Labour in the past. I think they ruled out working with National in this election, or maybe in the past election. So I'm not entirely sure where they stand at the moment on working with National, and I can't remember if ACT's ruled out working with Te Pāti Māori, but at the bottom of the day, they've got to form a government. So I had here an offer being presented to them as to whether they would form a government with National, the World. I tried to clarify whether they would be in government, and got this card, which suggests from a distance. Are they going to be out of government altogether? It's possible, because they're not over the threshold, but they usually would expect possibly to get an electorate seat. So, again, National and ACT, possibly with Te Pāti Māori roped in, and possibly New Zealand First sitting on the crossbenches, or in an arrangement of confidence and supply. That is what I see from these cards. I can't see it looks almost here like, you see this charity card where Labour seems to be giving charity to Te Pāti Māori, which would be represented by the yellow, which is interesting. Is it that they, like National used to do with David Seymour, would leave one of their MPs out of the Māori seats, for example, or not really compete in the Māori seats, so that Te Pāti Māori can get themselves over that threshold. And then, because you see they're dropping all the coins in Te Pāti Māori's pocket, and Greens is sort of over the side. It's often with Labour that they've ended up, not really, Greens have never really been part of the coalition. They've been confidence and supply, or kind of, last time it was New Zealand First and Labour that had the more of the coalition. James Shaw didn't get Deputy Prime Minister. It was Winston, and they were in coalition together with Greens on the outside in confidence and supply. So you see Māori handing the coins to, Labour handing the coins to Te Pāti Māori, which might suggest that they are in a sort of relationship with Labour, where Labour's giving them a bit of charity, like National had done for ACT in the past to try and get a few more seats in Parliament because of the situation with the electorate votes versus the party votes. So it could be that they're handing Te Pāti Māori some electorate seats in order for them to get more ministers into Parliament. So, is it a New Zealand first confidence in supply, or is it? Let's draw another card. Is the shape up of the government National, ACT, and New Zealand first? I can't see Labour supporting National. I can't see that happening. National and Labour government. It's red and blue. Page of Cups. I can't see Labour at this juncture winning the election either with these cards. That seems to be a little fish that they've caught. I don't think the Conservative Party's going to get in. I don't think any of the other parties are going to get in. Win any seats. So, yeah. Once again, will Winston form part of the government? He's driving away. It's possible that National and ACT might have a government by themselves. Felt like they were leaping ahead of themselves at that point. But definitely the polls are suggesting that they might get lucky. There might be. I can't see any other parties getting in. So it could be. It could be that Māori Party switch alliance and go with National and form a government. Are Māori Party going to be part of the next government? Labour, Greens, Māori Party with a white. With a white cloak. Could it be Labour Greens government with a white with New Zealand first on the crossbenches? Okay, let's have a look at who's going to be the Prime Minister. What are Chris Hipkins' chances of being the next Prime Minister of New Zealand after the election? Ace of Swords. What are Christopher Luxon's chances of being the next Prime Minister of New Zealand after the election? The Hierophant reversed. And that looks like Christopher Luxon. He's almost got a bald head. Is he going to be swindled out of it again? This is interesting. Labour giving charity to Greens and the Māori Party, but they're sort of unable to jump off the cliff here by themselves. Labour, Greens and the Māori Party are blocked from jumping off the cliff. Who's this white dog? There's a white... This has got a white party in there too. Is there some third extra party that's symbolised with white? I don't think that's going to suddenly come into play. I mean, here's New Zealand First, the black on a white horse. Is it possible that Labour, the Greens and the Māori Party would form a government with New Zealand First on the crossbenches? I don't know. I don't think they've got enough support at the moment, but it's possible. This suggests... I asked, though, for a National Act government, and it seemed to suggest a pot of luck there. But this doesn't look good for Mr. Luxon. It suggests Hipkins is going to be on the throne. This Queen of Wands also has a Labour coloured throne, which is interesting. I mean, it's possible that National and Act... I mean, this doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win. It's just their prospects. I mean, National Act and Labour forming a government? Doubt it. New Zealand First on the crossbenches. You've got a woman on the throne there. I don't know who that would be, because we haven't got a woman in any of the leadership roles, unless someone suddenly resigns prior to the election, like happened recently. I mean, yeah, I'm sort of starting to have my doubts now with these latest cards that I've pulled. I mean, that could be Labour overturned, but it looks like Chris Luxon upside down. Wearing the crown, but there's a block to him wearing the crown. So maybe it's some sort of minority government with New Zealand First on the crossbenches. Unless we see a Labour Greens, Māori Party, New Zealand First on the crossbenches kind of arrangement. White possibly representing them. Maybe New Zealand First goes through this transformation and decides to go with Labour again because National are too arrogant to offer them anything, whereas Labour will. And you've got, again, white sitting on a bench, and we've got black on a white horse. Will Winston go through a transformation and end up going with Labour because his talks with National just aren't satisfactory enough? And again, we find National and ACT look like they're going to be the ruling party, but get thwarted by some coalition arrangement. Lot of possibilities there. I'm going to leave it at that, I think. I can't make any more sense of it. I want a clarification. But yeah, I think we're going to leave it in murky waters. But there's the general. I mean, it's they're just the energies that surround the election. So there's potentials there. Interesting, because I would have thought a National ACT government looked likely with this card, but then I asked who's Prime Minister, and it looked like Chris Hipkins ended up with the Prime Ministership. And you see here, you've got the colours again of red, Labour and the Greens and Te Pāti Māori and possibly New Zealand First. So is New Zealand First going to go through a transformation and change their allegiance, not that they're aligned to National because they aren't, but make some deal with New Zealand First, even though Chris Hipkins is ruled out also working with New Zealand First? There's a lot of people ruling out working with each other, so somebody's going to have to work with each other to form a party. I know Labour and National are both saying that they're ruling out working. I mean, ACT and Labour have ruled out working with Winston Peters, but one of those parties is probably going to have to be part of a government. So, and if Winston Peters gets over that 5% threshold, they're going to have to work with him. Someone's going to have to work with him, potentially. I mean, National and ACT might have enough to govern alone, but on the cards, it didn't really look like. It's sort of said weakness, and they're jumping too ahead of themselves to be able to form a government, even though they've got the support of ACT. Yeah. Really, ultimately, is there much difference between National and Labour? That's another question you've got to ask yourself. Are they supporting each other behind the scenes? Who knows? That's me. I don't think I'm going to dwell on it anymore or draw any more cards. Well, let's draw a card for the overall theme of this election. Emperor. That seems to be someone wearing a red cloak. Are we going to see another Labour government? Interesting proposition. It couldn't be Labour and National. This doesn't make sense. Though, I don't think has Labour ruled out working with National? Has National ruled out working with Labour? I'm pretty sure they will have. Anyway, that's the end. That's it for me. Thank you.